Rugby league is not a Christmas thing in Australia. It's really all about cricket. It's the Boxing Day test. It's Scott Boland taking 6 wickets against England. It's Shane Warne spinning a web, and it's Ricky Ponting scoring another 100. It's quite simply too hot for the greatest game of all down here. But that hasn't always been the case in the Northern Hemisphere. For a long time in England, rugby league was a fixture on the Christmas calendar when it was played in winter. And even as recently as the 1990s, it still had games either on Christmas or Boxing Day. And in previous decades gone by, it even shared some days with soccer, or what was then called the First Division. And this is a little bit similar to the other Northern Hemisphere sports, particularly in the NFL. They have their Christmas schedule, and even today, the English Premier League still plays games on Boxing Day, and it's quite a large feast of football. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. Christmas Day matches were a feature on the English sporting calendar from 1895. And I guess, really, why not? I mean, there wasn't much else to do back then. There was no TV or radio. It was quite often a chance for people to have a day off and then enjoy something that they didn't always watch, or even if they were regular rugby league supporters, get along to a match that quite often would be played in midweek. The only times they didn't play on Christmas Day was on the Sunday, due to that being the Sabbath, but for every other day that Christmas fell on, they'd happily play. Now, quite obviously, this is different to Australia. Again, what were they going to do in England? It's dark, it's wet, most likely snowing in certain parts. It's not like Australia where you could get along to the beach, or you could go down to the park for a picnic, maybe play a little bit of cricket with your friends. There wasn't really much else to do unless you were going to go sit around in a house somewhere. And sometimes the rugby league and the early soccer clubs would collaborate. In areas like Hull, where they had both football and rugby league, they would sometimes play the rugby league match in the morning on Christmas Day, and then they'd play football in the afternoon. And that way the entire town would be entertained for the entire day. But as I say that, there's also a very important stakeholder there to consider, and that's the players and club officials. And according to English footballing midfielder Ray Barlow, it wasn't a favourite time of year for the players. When everyone else was off having Christmas lunch and gathering on the hill with a few pints, well, the players had to be playing and putting their bodies through the ringer. And that wasn't just for one-off games. Sometimes there'd be matches on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day. I mean, could you imagine if one of the sporting codes suggested that now? There would be a mutiny among players. And think about today, coaches complain about a short turnaround from Sunday to Thursday on the once or twice a season that happens. And it is a valid point, particularly when you're talking about rugby league and the amount of recovery they need. But back then, that didn't exist. Players played when they were told to play. That being said though, once the mid-60s rolled around, Christmas Day popularity was dropping in terms of sporting events. You had the introduction of TVs and radio, and people milling around and listening to the Queen's speech became a popular thing to do. So the popularity of Christmas games was on the wane. And that's fair enough when you think about it. Do you really want to be standing on a hill, or in an old grandstand watching rugby league where it's probably below freezing? Or would you rather be sitting at home with some friends watching a Christmas movie, or listening to the Queen's speech, or doing something else that was provided by commercial entertainment? You're probably not going to go and stand on the hill. And the crowd numbers started to drop after that. In fact, one of the biggest impacts on the old Christmas calendar was an injury to Arthur Beetson in the 1970s when he broke his leg. 1971 and 1972 proved the death knell for Christmas Rugby League, and it was the last time they played a match on Christmas Day. That being said, nearly a quarter of a century later, and it was back on the menu. Although Rugby League had swapped to its now more common summer competition in order to be getting access to grounds and to not try and compete with the Premier League, in 1996 Rugby League returned to the Christmas calendar. Similar to cricket in the Southern Hemisphere and obviously the Premier League, they would now play matches on Boxing Day. And whilst that isn't played yearly now, it was for quite a period in the 1990s. I'm surprised at this point that the NRL hasn't tried to come up with some kind of beach rugby league competition to play during summer to compete with the Big Bash, or even have some kind of Boxing Day entertainment in a world that is very much in the focus of cricket in Australia during summer. But it is interesting to note that Christmas sport and rugby league have been intertwined for over 100 years, and whilst they're not played regularly now, in the past they were part of the regular sporting calendar, and Christmas and Boxing Day was part of the rugby league season. These days though, if you're talking about Christmas and rugby league, you're talking about the origin period, when for us in Australia, it is very much Christmas in the middle of the year. It's cold, it's wet, it's dreary, and we have to listen to the Queenslanders up north who are talking about their mid-20s temperatures and the fact that up there it's apparently summer all year round. If you liked that video, don't forget to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. It's really helping, the numbers recently, particularly with last week's NFL video, have really kind of taken off. So if you did like the video, please subscribe, give us a like, share us around to your friends. Very much appreciated. This is my last video for 2023. I'm taking next week off because of course it actually is Christmas and I'm not going to have time to be sitting around editing videos. I'm very much going week to week at the moment until I can get ahead of my schedule. So I'll be back in 2024, first week of 2024, with a brand new set of videos ready to go for the 2024 season. So join me next year, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I will see you in January.